Crim 15, let us knock out Chapter 3. We're going to talk about justice and law. So, most of us, I believe, have a really good idea of what a law is. It is typically something that is written, and certainly in the United States, if it is not written, it is not a law. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. If it is not written, it is not a law. So laws are things that are written, whether they are written in a law book, written in a penal code, or they are written in a judicial decision. Laws are things that are written somewhere. They are words on paper that are rules that we have to live by. And we agree, just by living in this society, to live by the rules and laws of our society. Okay, so laws. Easy one, probably, more or less. We know what laws are. Justice, little bit more difficult to define. I could probably ask everyone in this class to define justice, and I would be willing to bet that I would get, other than if I asked you to, if you all went and Googled it and looked it up in your standard definition, if I asked you just to describe what to you the word justice meant, I would probably get a different description from every single one of you. Okay, so justice has a lot of different definitions. It has a lot of different meanings. It has a lot of different meanings to people in different circumstances. Justice to a victim might be different to justice to a suspect. Let's say, for example, my mother gets killed in a DUI accident, and a drunk driver hits and kills my mother. The suspect is arrested and is locked up in prison for 5 years because it was not an intentional murder. They killed my mother. He was drunk, got drunk, didn't mean to, blah, 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 blah. Okay, what is justice in that case? I just lost my mother. What does justice look like to me versus what does justice look like to the family of the suspect? Right? Okay, so justice depends on who you are. It depends on where you stand in the whole criminal justice system and in other areas. It doesn't mean just the criminal justice system, but of course we're talking about the criminal justice system in this class. So these are the learning objectives. You can read these. You can pause this if you want to and read those. But as far as this chapter is concerned, we are going to talk about these three themes: fairness, equality, and impartiality. The origins of the concept of justice, the word comes from the Greek word dike, which is weird because justice and dike don't sound anything like each other, and usually those words kind of sound alike, but they don't, which refers to everything staying in its proper place. Plato also believed that justice was achieved by maintaining the status quo. And it kind of means like everything being in its place. And that kind of makes sense. Everything being as it should, as opposed to there being kind of an upheaval in the way things are. So he believed that it was one of four civic virtues, along with wisdom, temperance, and courage. And then Aristotle also believed that it was the basis of law, defining it as unwritten customs of a people that distinguish it between what is and is not honorable. Okay. So justice involves the rightful possession of economic goods, opportunities for development, meaning education or citizenship. This kind of sounds familiar right now in our communities. We're having a lot of discussions, certainly in our area in California, certainly in the Central Valley, about whether or not illegal immigrants should have the right or opportunity to get an education. And there's a lot of argument, discussion, you name it, about that particular issue. Is it just to allow for people who are in our country, and think DACA specifically is one of those issues that's been quite the hot button topic in the Central Valley. Certainly at Fresno City College, we have a lot of youth who attend Fresno City College that are DACA recipients, and these are young people who were brought to the United States by their parents as children illegally, and have known no other home, but are here now in the United States illegally, and did have protections in the United States, and then the protections were, as I understand it, withdrawn or going to be withdrawn, and I think it's now still kind of in question, although with President Biden in control now, I think that those things might change. But is it the right thing to do? Is it the just thing to do? Again, so when we're talking about justice, we're not necessarily talking only about the criminal justice system. But anyways, I ramble. Recognition, honor, or status. Since some possessions are scarce, justice requires that goods be distributed using standards of entitlement, such as need and desert. And when we're talking about desert, we're not talking about like cheesecake dessert. We're talking about who deserves something, who should get something versus who should not get something. What do you deserve? Okay, your book, page 55, has the definitions for all of these. There are different theories about what we call distributive justice, which is justice that concerns what measurement should be used to allocate society's resources. So we're talking about justice. How should we decide who in a community should get the resources that community has to offer? Education. Who should have an opportunity to receive an education? Should it just be anybody? So these are some different theories as to who should receive those resources. The egalitarian theory starts with the basic premise of equality or equal shares for all. Period. No matter who you are, everybody has the exact same opportunity. Okay. The Marxist theory places need above desert or entitlement. Okay, so the more you need, the more you get. Okay, so the more you need, the more you get. So if you have some already, then you don't get any more. Am I making sense? I hope so. Libertarian theory promotes freedom from interference from the government in a social and economic sphere. Therefore, merit, entitlement, and productive contributions are given weight over equal shares. Okay, so this is the kind of concept where if you have a lot, you know the right people, and you are able to, I kind of think of this as a Donald Trump version, and not Donald Trump president version, the Donald Trump pre-president version. He was born in a wealthy family. His dad had connections, and he was able to kind of talk his way into money, and more money. The more you have, the more you get. That's kind of how I would describe this whole libertarian theory. And the utilitarian theory maximizes benefits for individuals and society with a mixed emphasis on entitlements and needs. Okay, so these are basically just theories about how society should distribute the resources that it has. And some of these theories you'll see are kind of, they're controversial because a lot of people would say that we should all take care of each other, and everyone should have equal opportunities to succeed. And others would say, work hard, keep working hard. I work hard, you work hard, and take care of yourself. So I'm not trying to argue one way or the other, but these are just some concepts and some ideas that have been put forth by some theorists. Which, what does this have to do with police ethics? I'm not really sure, but this is what your this is what your book has, so I'm sure it's going to tie in. But anyways, this guy, John Rawl, really basically, in kind of a shorter version, believed that any inequities in society should be to benefit those who are least advantaged. So if there are inequities in society, those inequities should favor the poor or the least advantaged. And this makes sense. And I can tell you that this is it is probably what happens today in society. And certainly in California. And I'll give you some examples. I can see things like college acceptance. You'll note that I would say I'm going to give you an example. I have my daughter, I'll use as an example, has very, 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 very good grades. Yes, I'm bragging about her. Really, really, really good grades and very high SAT scores, things like that. So we're in the middle of applying for some colleges and things like that. And most of the colleges that she has applied to do not offer academic scholarships. They offer needs-based scholarships. So if you need the money, it's there. But if you have really good grades and really good SAT scores, they're like, we're not unless you need the money, we're not going to give it to you. So I don't know if that makes sense. So unfortunately or fortunately, I'm blessed. I have a decent job, so we don't need the money for college. I mean, we'll take it, don't get me wrong. And she worked hard all those years, so we're probably not going to be able to get a whole heck of a lot of college money for her because I have a pretty decent job and my husband has a decent job. So, but that money is going to go to people who do need the money, maybe don't have the SAT scores and the grades off the charts, but maybe they wouldn't have those. Maybe they would have those SAT scores and grades off the charts if they didn't have to work in high school, and maybe you have to think about the advantages and the disadvantages. And so is it fair? We want to make sure that our society we want to put our best foot forward throughout all of society. So anyways, here's criticisms. The veil of ignorance cannot, a veil of ignorance. Oops, I didn't mean to. This John Rawl guy, it was his idea that people will develop fair principles of distribution only if they are ignorant of their position in society. So to get objective judgments, the decision maker must not know how the decision would affect him or her. So these are some criticisms to his. The veil of ignorance cannot counteract human selfishness and self-interest. So anyways, we're going to kind of scooch on to the next slide here. So we're going to get into kind of the forms of justice, and a lot of this has a lot to do with the field of corrections, so it kind of goes right up my alley here. Substantive justice refers to inherent fairness. So just desserts. And when we say, again, we're not talking about cheesecake, just desserts. An eye for an eye. You get what you deserve. Okay. And we're going to talk about retribution is basically an eye for an eye. So when we talk about retributive justice or I can't say this word very well, retributive justice, basically we're talking about there being, when we use the term balance, we're talking about an eye for an eye or payback, almost a vengeance. Although it says mercy, it is an eye, it's kind of an eye for an eye type of concept. A sanctuary is a place where a person can go in order to avoid punishment, basically. So you've heard of a sanctuary state. You've heard of churches being a sanctuary. There are places, there's actually a place called the Sanctuary Youth Shelter. Yeah, I'm sure you've all heard, maybe you haven't, but there's a Sanctuary Youth Shelter here in downtown Fresno where runaway youth can go. I think, well, typically it's supposed to be for runaway youth or youth that need short-term care because of issues with their parents. But a sanctuary is a place for a person to ultimately avoid justice. Utilitarian justice is basically the type of justice that looks for the greatest good for all as an end. So they're looking to better society at the end of whatever the punishment is. Oops. Procedural justice. This is basically, we're talking about kind of the court process. So when we are talking about procedural justice, we're really talking about the court process and how the court process works. And it's really interesting, these three cases that are in your book on page 63, they talk about three separate cases where offenders were convicted. They were later filed appeals, I think 63 and 64. Oh, yes. And at least Herrera versus Collins, he tried to get a new trial to say that he had new evidence, took the case to the Supreme Court saying his rights were violated, and the courts basically said, new evidence is not a violation of your rights. So sounds like his case was denied, but take some time to read through that. But this is a court process, notice of charges, court process, and the protections that one has in the court proceedings. So again, your criminology students, I'm guessing you've had some coursework in the courts. Hopefully you'll take my crim 4, or I think crim 6 maybe, I'm not sure, but anyways, I'm gonna kind of skip through that. Page 65 talks about procedural justice research. I'm gonna skip through that as well. Wrongful convictions and the Innocence Project. Can there be a wrongful conviction? Wow, yes, there can. Watched a movie over the summer, and I believe it was based on a true story. I think they all say that they are. Shoot, now I can't remember the name of it. I will try to remember that. It was called Just Mercy. I had to look it up. Just Mercy. Great movie. You got to watch it. Is it on Netflix? I don't know. I can't remember where I got it, but anyways, really good movie. But yeah, wrongful convictions do happen. Do you think that the community trusts the court system? All it takes is one wrongful conviction, one person being put to death. Exactly. So you can understand where that becomes a problem. So There's some more information here. Again, please read your book. Reasons for false convictions. Defense lawyers' incompetence. And I shouldn't laugh here, but I worked in a courtroom for about 8 years as a juvenile when I was working in the juvenile division with Fresno County Probation, and I literally saw attorneys fall asleep. It was sad. Defense attorneys. I never saw a DA or a prosecutor. I never saw them fall asleep, but I literally saw attorneys fall asleep. Pull out the wrong file. And I saw some amazing defense attorneys. So let me not put down all defense attorneys. Some of them are absolutely amazing, and some of them are horrific. So the incompetence, it's out there, and some of them are amazing. So that's definitely one reason. Suppression of exculpatory evidence. Sometimes not all the evidence gets in the trial. It happens. False or mistaken eyewitness identification. I'm going to be willing to bet that if you haven't done it yet, you're going to have one of those, well, since we haven't been in school, it's kind of hard to say, but one of those exercises where you're going to be tested on trying to identify someone. I had a class in the forum hall where I used to have someone, not in the forum hall, but one of the larger OAB classrooms. And I'd have someone get up and walk out in the middle of the class and then try and get everyone to describe that person. And half the time they couldn't even tell if it was a guy or a girl that got up and walked out of the class. So a lot of times it's mistaken eyewitness identification, invalid forensic science. Mistakes happen. Informant, jailhouse informant, perjured testimony. Do people lie on the stand? All day, every day? Yes. Government misconduct. Do you think that there are people who want to get promotions and things like that that might be dishonest? Yes. And then, of course, bad lawyering is probably the same thing as up here. But anyways, sorry. Perceptions of blacks and whites differ regarding the criminal justice system. And I think most of us are probably can understand why this is. We all live in the United States, and we can all see certainly the perception, what we see on TV, what we see on social media. And I'll be, very honest. You've all seen me. You've seen videos of me. I am your average, 40-something white soccer mom lady. Okay. I've sat in a courtroom before, and I have watched cases where the rich white kid got sentenced to something less than the poor Hispanic kid. And, we live in Fresno. So for me, I saw a lot more of the poor Hispanic kid as opposed to the black kid. Of course, there were, I saw it happen a lot in other, there was a poor white kid that got anyways, what I'm trying to say, I witnessed it. I saw it happen in front of my eyes. So I think a lot of us would say, oh, that doesn't really happen. I think we're fooling ourselves if we think this doesn't happen. Is it all about race and ethnicity? I don't know. Does money have anything to do with it? I don't know. But I certainly would like to see us as a community in general continue to do better. Okay, so race permeates the criminal justice system. There's disproportional representation of blacks in certain crime categories. Robbery, that is one of those that I have seen it over my career in law enforcement and corrections. I was mostly in corrections. Racial profiling by police, lack of access to competent attorneys. Who's hiring the great defense attorneys? People with money. Public defenders are working for the people who don't have money. Blacks are disproportionately responsible for crime leads to racial profiling and saturation of patrols. So there are certain neighborhoods. I could go drive around in, let's say, Clovis for an hour or two and probably not see a cop. I could drive around in Southwest Fresno for an hour or two and probably see 20 cops. Is that good, bad? Why does that happen? I don't know. I wish we were in class together so we could actually discuss this. Okay, restorative justice is something that's really common. Oh, I gotta get through this. Sorry, I'm talking way too long. Really popular in our community right now. Fresno Pacific University is running our restorative justice program in Fresno. This is a program where victims and offenders get together with a mediator and discuss the crime, discuss the criminal behavior, and try and work it out without court involvement. Read your book for more about restorative justice. Google it. Okay. All right, immoral laws. A lot of you were thinking, like, well, what are we talking about, immoral laws? Think back to our not so distant history when Black people weren't allowed to drink out of certain water fountains, use certain restrooms, go into certain restaurants, belong to certain clubs. Japanese people were put into internment camps, things like that. Unjust laws. Immoral laws and the moral person. How does that make people feel? How does that make the moral, ethical person feel? Come on, civil disobedience. And is it okay at that point to get up and say, look, I do not believe in these laws? If you are being civilly disobedient then and protesting, not protesting like burning places down and killing people, but protesting meaning going out and peacefully speaking, peacefully speaking against something. Voluntarily breaking established laws based on your moral beliefs. Is that okay? Again, I wish we were in class so that we could talk about this. But yeah, let's stop here.